Everyone. Thank you for joining us, for another episode of D&I One-on-One. My name is Jina Etienne. I am the host of this biweekly program. We are here every other Friday at 3 o'clock Eastern with a different guest. I'm a D&I practitioner. I offer training, coaching, keynote speaking, everything that my guest offers because we are fellow practitioners. Joining me today is Timika Lindsay, Timi. She's president and CEO of Anchor Leadership Solutions. Timi is a 30-year retired Navy veteran specializing in higher education administration, information technology, and diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI, for government, commercial, and nonprofit organizations. Her executive DEI focus areas include strategic planning, training and professional development, facilitation and community engagement, and environmental and economic justice. Whew. So she does quite a bit. She's internationally recognized as a keynote speaker, moderator, and panelist for conferences, workshops, and professional consulting. Timi, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Just a few things there on your resume, but this is awesome. And I'm really excited to talk to you today because military service, veterans, DEI, the work in the military, it's so not well known and understood because so much of the work we do is really corporate America. What happens in business? We don't talk about government. We don't necessarily talk about higher education or nonprofit. So today, you get to bring your experience and help educate all of us. So let's start with a little bit of background on your role. Can you tell us how do you get into DEI? What's the story?
So I was actually sitting in the middle of the night at my desk in Yokosuka, Japan. My desk was actually on a ship, and on chat, which was US time, they came up, my detailer, who's my job assigner, he's my career manager, came up and he said, Timi, I want to send you back to Annapolis. And I said, that's wonderful. It's about time you picked me to run the cyber department. And they said, no, it's not cyber. You're going to be the diversity officer. And I was like, what's that? I've never even seen a job posting for that. And what I was told was they screened across the military, across the Navy, and they found me as the best and most qualified. Now I had to ask myself, was I qualified because I was a woman? Because I was a Black woman? You know, who knows? And likely I would probably say that was probably a big piece. They also knew that I was a very senior officer, a Navy captain, and because I was always involved in our command's equal opportunity program. So I did often speak for underrepresented. I spoke for my team. I spoke for, transparency and communications up and down. So I've always been that type of advocate. So my name preceded me. And before I knew it, the Chief of Naval Operations said, yes, Timi Lindsay will report to the Naval Academy. So when I got there, I was responsible for many things. But literally, Jina, you're not going to believe this. When I asked my boss what my job description was, he said, be a woman of action. That was it.
I wrote that down actually because I was going to ask you. You said that to me before. And I'm like, can you tell me what that's a great job description, but did you ever get a real one, or what did he mean by that?
I didn't know what he meant by that. And you could take it two ways. It's either one is, I have no clue what you're supposed to be doing, but just make me look good and don't screw up. Or two, I'm giving you a clean slate to make this into the program that you think it is. I took the latter. And so I, as a graduate of the Naval Academy, graduating in 1992, I decided to look at things from what has happened since 1992 to 2017. And so talking to midshipmen, talking to faculty, talking to coaches and staff, and really wrapping my mind about those things. And I had the baseline diligent duties of, the special emphasis month observances, things like that. But I said, okay, we need to do more. What are we doing in admissions? What are we doing in retention? What are we doing, in all of these different things? And soon before I knew it, I became a mentor to many, because people just wanted to do things. And I think the key thing that caused me to actually go into action was 2 young Black female midshipmen came to me, and they sat at my office and they said, "Captain, I don't have a voice." And that killed me. That was like a rock in my stomach, because I saw myself in them from almost 30 years before. And then I was only one of 4 Black females to graduate from my class. So seeing them come in.
Let me time out you for a second. Sorry to
Yeah.
interrupt. But I want to go to that slide and you can tell us a little bit more about that.
Okay,
But
sure.
and then I also want to ask you about recruitment. And then you're talking about the Naval Academy. We know there's a lot of other branches of the military. So many questions. But let's start with this beautiful picture. Beautiful picture. You want to tell us about these 4 women?
So before social media was a thing, the picture that you see in the center of the 4 Black women are the 4 of us that graduated from the class of 92. We actually started with 7. We ended with 4. We are best friends. We chat every day. And we are doing the thing. And we're the only 4 in Naval Academy history. I should say we're the only class in Naval Academy history where the Black females all made it to retirement rank. So we all did a career in the Navy. The upper left, or the person on your left, is Dr. Tracy Nicole Hayes. She has a grant writing program, and she's authored 2 books, 3 books, I'm sorry, one of them being on being a foster mom in the military. The next one is Valerie Mansfield. She got out and she went into the reserves, very active in reserves. She deployed so many times to Djibouti, Africa, several tours there, overseas, etc. And she became a large government contracting executive. The one in front behind me in the picture is Alice Campbell. Alice was supply corps, so she knows all about money, right? Numbers, that's what we call supply corps, our financier. And after her retirement, she actually opened up 2 edible arrangements stores. She has 2 storefronts in Memphis, Tennessee. And they all kind of rallied around me and left me in to stay in the longest. And I stayed for the full 30.
Yeah, and I think you just recently retired. I just realized we're going to get in trouble if I don't do polling questions. And I'm surprised nobody's asked already. So Autumn, maybe we can go into our very first one. And we're going to talk about this one a little bit more, but do you consider veterans an underrepresented group? And so we'll keep this open for about a minute, and then I know the routine will show the results. And it's interesting because Timi, you were just sharing that wonderful story about 4 Black women in the history to make it to the officer ranks. You graduated together,
and
I
retired.
believe. What did you say about and retired? Yeah, yes. You had about 30% of this class were women. Only the 4 of you. Oh,
that's
now.
So in 1992, only 10% of the class. We average about 1,200. We average about 1,100 students a class. We can only have 4,400 students at a service academy at any given time. So only 10% of that group is women. It is now 30%. That's what they're graduating at now.
So I'm seeing the results. And as we close up the poll here, 65% said yes, that they consider veterans an underrepresented group. And I wanted to ask that question because as you were talking about the story, we know that when you say underrepresented, it has several meanings. It can mean, in your case, the representation in your student body. It's a representation in society. We know that there are groups that are defined as underrepresented groups in different types of legislation. And so when you wanted to ask this question, would you classify veterans as an underrepresented group?
I do. And the reason is this. First of all, only 1% of the US workforce actually joins the military. It is a very bold move. It has to be a very individual move. Because it's a selfless move. We're going to serve and fight for our country. So only 1% of the workforce actually go into the military. Now, not all of them do a 30-year career. I wasn't planning on doing a 30-year career, but I loved it. I loved the opportunities, and I took advantage of all the opportunities it offered me. 2 master's degree, chance to travel and see the world, take my kids with me. It was a wonderful experience. So when we think about military or having military as part of an underrepresented group, it is because when they transition, there are still many veterans who are struggling to transition into that workforce. Maybe they don't want to talk about their military experience. We're trying to and tell them that they have a very unique military experience that they can offer to nonprofit, corporate, federal government entities.
So it's interesting. Then I want to jump. We're jumping around as I usually do.
Sure.
This slide, then I do want to go back to. So what do you actually do when you're doing DEI work in the military? Is it the same as me? And hint, hint, hint. We do very similar work. But you just talked about, veterans as they transition out of military service and into civilian roles. Tell us a little bit about some of those challenges, because for those listening, some may be actually involved in their DEI efforts in their organizations. Some may just be learning a little bit more about DEI, but all of us can play a role, whatever type of organization we're in. Yes?
Absolutely. So for the longest time, the military and corporations had a very hard time translating our skill sets. So like you told me to be careful, watch out for all types of acronyms and questions about what we do. It has been a challenge in getting that bridge from what military has been doing to what we do on, what's done on the outside. So when a veteran comes up there and they say, put me to work, they honestly mean it, because that's almost like what happened to them when they were in the military. I mean, we got our basic skills, but then we had to do so much more. Basic ship handling, damage control, crisis management, watch standing, doing all these on top of whatever our specialty is or was in the military. The other thing about the military is that we have very much of a we attitude over I. So it's very hard for us to talk and brag about ourselves, because we are a team. We realize that diversity, equity, inclusion is our strength. To create unity, we need to have unity and trust within our organization, because we're at the tip of the spear. We're ready to fight at any given time. We're on 24/7. So we are on, and we have to work together. It's not an I thing ever. And then the other thing is that, and I've talked to many of my colleagues who have either gotten out before retirement age or even post-retirement. And one of the things they all tell me that is how much they miss the military is because they were valued as an individual and not a number, if you will. So I have a friend who flies for FedEx. And he said, I've been flying with them for 20 years and I'm known as number, da, 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 da. And he says, when I was in the military, though, I was known by my name, and I missed that. So he valued, and he realized what he's missing. He missed in our military camaraderie.
So it's interesting. I will say my perception, and it's just mine, I would have seen it the other way around, that in the military, you're a face and a number, the whole thing, name, rank, and serial number that you hear people joking about. By the way, there are quite a few people. Somebody said, I'm so proud of our speaker today, thrilled that they're here. Yes, and veterans and their families are so often overlooked in programs offered and geared towards the military community. And then translating our military experiences into civilian speak. Just so there are a couple people who are, some of what you're saying is already resonating. And so for what I was just commenting on, I guess I'm seeing it backwards, because military personnel feel seen in the military. Maybe it's because in corporate America, they don't share that they were veterans, or when they do, we're not sure how to approach them.
Yeah, a little bit of that, Jina. I guess the way to rephrase that is, even in the military, yes, I do agree. We used to always have to have a name, rank, and serial number, right? That's how we reported ourselves and things like that. However, we knew that we were part of a team and had to be somewhere, and there was accountability and there was closeness. That's at its minimal level. At the higher level, we all know what we have to do and how we contribute to whatever the mission is. If you convert that to this corporate side, if you're not showing up, then you're not showing up, period. That's the difference. When somebody doesn't show up in our work, we get concerned immediately and we start going after you. So I'm not saying that we're a utopia in the Navy or in the military. We still have work to do. But that's probably one of the biggest things is like, hey, where's Smith? Why isn't he here? Go check on him. And he or she, Smith, has a chain of command in which we can interact with. So there is some type of an accountability piece there because we never leave anyone behind.
Yeah, I did a program, I believe it was June of 2021.
Mm-hmm.
And it was with a gentleman who served, I don't remember what branch of the military. Is it arm of the military or branch of the military?
So you have your service and then you have branches within the service.
Okay. So,
but
if I want to say, like,
you have your branches of
Air
service.
Force, is it the
right.
arm? Never mind. Anyway, so he served in the military and I invited him to join me in a conversation. So we had this conversation privately and I said, would you be willing to have it publicly? And it was around the phrase that so many people hear, I don't see color. And there's so many meanings and implications, and it's often not positive, and it can feel dismissive and marginalizing to many. That's just like, well, your gender doesn't matter, your race doesn't matter, your ethnicity doesn't matter. And for all of us, we're like, no, I want to be seen for those things. He brought a very different perspective, though. He was talking about when he was in the military, we were all green. And that there was this mindset, and maybe that's what you might have been referring to when you were talking about the diversity and inclusion is already there to some degree because you don't have the luxury. You said tip of the spear. I actually never heard that before. Almost missed it up. You don't have the luxury of individualism. It's the work is way bigger than you, way more important than you. So if that's the mindset, how does that then translate when people go into work every day? Because that might feel shocking if you're used to that environment. Now you feel alone potentially in the workplace.
Correct. And those people who do not, unfortunately, know how to translate that and go into the work and know that they're part of a new team that doesn't wear a uniform, we find that that's where our mental health issues are at its peak. Veteran suicides are definitely a concern. We've seen that since the Vietnam War, and getting out. It's not just what they call post-traumatic stress disorder, thinking that we've all seen something very graphic, but it is that sense of feeling insular, incomplete, unused, not knowing where their direction is. So yeah, that's where we say our DEI, we do have a camaraderie, a military camaraderie there. But now we also have to understand that in that there is still individuals behind that. And that's what we're working on in the military as well. We still need to see them for their individual and their uniqueness that come to play. We have 5 generations in the workforce. So if you're looking at someone who is a 4-star admiral, and then you're looking at seaman so-and-so in the Navy or midshipman candidate so-and-so, their history and their experiences are all different. And our younger generation, we all know them. We know our millennials and our Gen Zers. They ask why. They ask why a lot more than what we used to do in our Gen Xers phrase. And it does cause some questions like, well, why? And that's our diversity of thought piece there, where we have to be more innovative. We cannot afford to do things over and over again the way that we did back in, we'll just say Desert Shield, Desert Storm. That was 1990s, or back in Vietnam or Korea or World War II. That's not the wars that we're fighting in the future. So our youth who carry this are thinking their information processing is so much greater than what we had going in the military. We have to leverage their expertise, their individualism, how they collect and disseminate and actually execute on their actions.
So this is a perfect segue. I promise you people, we did not plan this, but this is a perfect segue actually to the second polling question. So I'm going to go ahead and launch it now. It's a little soon maybe, but do you belong to any military related affinity or resource groups? Now, resource groups are something that are inside of organizations, but they're not necessarily. There are some that you can be a part of in your community. Same with affinity groups. And then for some organizations, they don't necessarily call them resource groups. So for example, when I was at Grant Thornton, they were referred to as business resource groups, not employee resource groups. So as you answer this question, it's really any way you see these groups. And I think when we asked the question, it was really organized around where people were inside their organizations. So when this poll closes, Timmy, if you wouldn't mind maybe continuing on that vein just a little bit. And by that, I mean, when we talk about supporting our veterans in the workforce, the employee resource group I'm seeing then in two ways. One, we can learn more about veterans because we are involved in those resource groups. Mm-hmm. And the resource groups can provide some of that support as the transition into these organizations. And then you have from there growth and development, networking, and building relationships outside of the military. So
that's
can
right.
we talk a little bit more about that? Yeah. I see 79% of the people said no. So
wow. Okay. So I have found more and more organizations actually starting a veteran resource group. That just is another commonality, or if you want to call it intersectionality, that we all share with one another. We do see the things that are visible, right? We see male, female for the most part. We see race. We see maybe attire. So you might be suiting, saying, oh, that person's dressed like an executive, so they must be an executive versus not. So we see the visible, but the things that are invisible includes our military. Unless we're wearing a class ring or a pin or a pendant that says it. And I've oftentimes been mistaken as the spouse or not even the officer, and I've had to correct. And then when I go and tell people, I did 30 years, they're like, whoa, because they assume it's my dad. My dad likes to wear my Navy ball cap. I don't wear ball caps, but he wears mine. And they go up to him and say, thank you for your service. And then he just points over to me and is like, it's her, he did his time in the ring.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The idea of visible and invisible dimensions of diversity, we do a lot of that in our work. And I think too often when we talk about D&I in corporate America, particularly post George Floyd, the first thing that pops up into people's mind is race. And while that's an important conversation, one of the things I love about this series is it's everything. If it has to do with connection, workplace culture, policies and practices, it falls under or is related to DEI.
Right.
So so if organizations don't have an employee resource group, are there other ideas then? How can we support our veterans in our organizations?
Well, let me just add is you don't have to be one of to be part of. Right. That's what allyship is all about. So I can't tell you, like, for example, I'm on a nonprofit organization, and I have people that are in there that just says, I haven't been part of the US Navy, but I love it. Or my uncle served, or my son's in, or something like that. And I want to be part of this. So it is, just because you don't think that, hey, I don't fit that, you can still be that ally and say, I want to support. So I see that you brought up my Timi-isms.
Well, you said allyship, and when you said that, and I saw here you wrote this is a leadership issue.
It is.
When we think about leadership, we only think about boss down, but you can be a domain leader. You can be a leader, a leader in pure influence.
And it's usually the influencer that's the one that gets things done.
Yeah.
That's who the leader goes to. They'll make a beeline right to them, right?
Right. And maybe who they're assuming the leader is, right?
Yep.
Sometimes the way you walk into a room, the way you carry yourself, the way you interact with people, people prescribe on you the leadership title or credentials, even if it's not the role, sorry, the credential in the position. So, and I think allyship is important because you're saying, I am not a veteran, I never served in the military, but I can go and join our veterans employee resource group and get involved. That's educating me. It's not just about educating them and supporting them.
Absolutely. 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 And you can learn so much. You know, I served, like I said, I served many years in the Navy, you know, but in some of the groups that I've been involved in, I learned more about the other services. So when I talk to people like, hey, you know, don't silo yourself, get to learn them all. And having a veterans resource group actually brings them all to you. So you can learn about the many programs. You can learn a lot about how their camaraderie works and how that can be expanded in an organization. And let me say a little bit about retention of military. Military retention in a normal corporate organization is over 80%. Over 80%. So it's worth the hiring of a veteran. Please don't think of it just as, oh, it's our patriotic duty to reemploy the workforce. It's more than that. You are getting your value, your return on investment 10 times, 50 times, 100 times fold when you hire a military vet.
You're just going to have, in theory, less turnover because there's a
turnover. Yep.
So my brain, what's happening in my brain? I don't want people to stay out of some level of commitment. So I want to make sure that people are staying for all the right reasons. So is there a risk if I flip the coin on this the other way? Somebody joins, I hire somebody, they're a veteran, and they don't leave despite discomfort, sense of isolation, or whatnot, out of a sense of obligation, because what I've learned in the military is you say and you serve. Is there a risk of that?
No, I don't think so. I think when a person transitions from the military, they're leaving for different reasons. One is that they feel that their time in the service is up and it's time for them to enter the workforce. So that's a very adult decision, you know, saying I can transition elsewhere. So they could do that again. And then those that are retired that actually do that, I think because we've been, you know, doing this military walk for 30, 20, 30 years, they're not afraid necessarily to walk away. They're going to do and make an impact where they can. And that's another big thing. They want to make an impact. And then they will, you know, if it's not there, then they will move on. But finding organizations and then having that organization build an ERG or a military resource group or BRG, we found that to be very beneficial, and it actually reinforces veterans' decision to stay because they find so many other commonalities for being there.
So let me see if this is on this slide. What I want to ask about.
So you know, going back to
a little bit about this.
Yeah, can you go back to the Timi-isms?
Yeah, absolutely.
So my philosophy, if you can see it, you can be it, right? And we kind of talked about the things that you can see on the surface. You can see that I am a woman and I am a Black woman. Well, once you start scratching the surface and see that there are others that are just like you, the attention, the fascination, the drawing towards the connections start to actually get a little bit stronger in building that community. So having a resource group such as the Veterans Resource Group to, one, know that there's other veterans in the organization, and two, that there are allies in the organization that thank you for your service, for what you've done, and understand the value that you can continue to add in their organization. It helps in the diversity, equity, and inclusion enterprise.
So I'm looking at the questions that have come in. Somebody, first of all, said, yes, I'm always, all caps, mistaken as a military spouse. I think this is an interesting point because one of the things we know in our society, we're mistaken for a lot of things.
Yeah.
So women might not be seen as the CEO,
Mm-hmm.
or other things. You meet a person and we make assumptions about their race or ethnicity. Lord knows people think they prescribe age on somebody, but we've all learned, don't tell people how old you think they are because you're going to get in trouble.
Yep.
But we have this tendency to do that, and so we make assumptions. One of the things we know in our work is we probably shouldn't make assumptions. That does mean we have to learn how to boldly ask a question. Say that again.
No, you dissect the word assume, and
Oh
you know
yeah,
what that is. So
we know what that is. We
never
know what
assume.
that is. Maybe next time I should spell that out in the slide, because that first
Yep.
part we can't say that publicly on the air.
Yep.
But maybe y'all will know, break it down.
Yep.
Someone said, I think a risk could center around some of the buzzwords we hear today, like burnout. Veterans are mission oriented and not time oriented, so we
Yeah.
tend to focus on task completion and not the clock.
Yeah.
So
I agree. I wholeheartedly agree. And I think that that's where a resource group can help. My father to this day thinks that I fake my retirement. He thinks that I put on a show for him. And his definition of retirement and my definition of retirement are two different things. No, I have not picked up my golf club set like he envisioned me doing. I still have a bias for action and continue to promote my DEI and my leadership and development skills and help others. So yes, because the military is used to being on mission, on task 24/7, that unwinding time is critical. And I do know that there are organizations that, hey, I want to reach out to you, and they expect the person to get out of uniform on Friday and come to work on Monday in civilian clothes. That person might need some time. And so if you're on hiring and if there's any way that you can have something where they have some time to decompress from the military, it might be 3 months, it might be 6, it could be a year, maybe like have them on board part-time or something, just to let them unwind that clock that's within them, that has been built in them for a long time, to have that decompression. That is key for a veteran transitioning during these times.
Yeah. So I'm looking at your isms. If you can see it, you can be it.
Yeah.
Want to talk about that?
People thought I was, the picture of the four of us, when I was in Japan, I'm walking with eagles on my collar. And I remember standing in line at the checkout lane, and these sailors, their mouths were wide open. They're like, ma'am, I've never seen a Black female captain before. Now understand this. A Black captain, I was the senior ranking Black female in the Navy when I retired. So it's rare. We are unicorns. You don't see a lot of us. And just that time, me turning around and talking to them, and it's like, hey, let's do lunch sometime. Let's go talk. Or they went back to the ship and like, guess what I just saw? It was just very weird. So I do believe that, when I ask them, where are you from? Tell me about you. Any of that, they are just fascinated that I'm taking the time to talk to them, and gave them a path. Like, well, if she made it, why can't I?
Yeah.
And that's because no one's had that conversation with them.
But and you're talking about a really important concept called representation. And one of the things we talk about with our clients is when you don't have representation, especially if you have a diverse workforce, where's that diversity in management? Is that diversity in leadership? And what can happen, and the example you just gave, is somebody just joins your organization, they've been there a year, maybe 2, and they're looking at the leadership. They're looking at the executive leadership or management, and they don't see anybody that looks like them. And that's not just a question of race. It could be somebody with a visible disability. It could be somebody who has an accent. It could be somebody who's really, really tall, because we know there's a bias against height in this country, too tall or too short. And so representation means seeing somebody in these different groups that show and send the message to everyone else in the organization that you have an opportunity here too. And so you were doing that in the grocery store.
I was.
You were.
We were showing that picture was actually in at the Naval Academy in the beautician's parlor. So all the black
Picture the
female,
four of you.
yes. And she
Oh, wait,
just,
wait. Sorry. That picture is in the beautician's
yes. So
parlor.
at the academy, that
Okay.
picture was on her wall.
Oh,
So
I thought you
was
said it was
on her
taken
wall.
in the
It
wall.
was on her wall. So other female midshipmen would come in and say, "Who are they?"
Mhm.
Oh my gosh. And like they asked, her name was Flo. Her name is Flo. She's 95 years old now. But they would say, "Who are they?" And then she would tell the story about us, about us being midshipmen and coming into her chair. And, that was kind of our getaway, our chance to decompress, and talk. And so she would tell stories about us, and they're like, "Oh, I'd like to meet them." And three of us happened to be in and out of Maryland all the time. So so many midshipmen have connected with us over the years and still keep in touch with us. We mentor them to this day. And we talk to them about resiliency. We talk to them about, tackling the things that are of great importance and just kind of letting some other things go, how to prioritize, because there is being four or one, being a small number carries with it also a burden. That it's not intended,
Yeah,
but because you look like that, there is a stereotype burden that is also put on you, and how you represent your community and how you represent your rank. And that's also a double-edged sword of the intersectionality piece and how that all started too, right? So it is, I had so many people come to me, "Can you talk to this Black sailor?" And I'm like, "Why do I need the one that's talking to the Black sailor? If I asked you to talk to somebody else that was outside of my physical features, wouldn't you say that I was a weak leader?" Like, no, let me give you the skill set so you can be a better leader and go there. And then I'll follow up and see if the conversation went well.
Right.
But, it was things that people were trying to push off because I was the only. And understand that is also not fair to the small underrepresented groups.
So a couple things from what you just said. Actually, this is the one thing that pops into my head. So if I were to invite you to come speak to a young Black sailor, it could be because you're Black, and I just not as comfortable, or I make assumptions about your ability and like, you're Black, you can go talk to the Black person. But it could also be that perhaps your experiences are relatable to this young sailor in a way that I can't relate. So I say that then one of the things some people do is make an automatic assumption that you're asking me because I'm Black. And so there's an invitation there that says, how can I help in this conversation? And I would encourage us to not make the assumption that that's the only reason we're being invited, because some people can be reactive in that way, especially as we have more open conversations about diversity and inclusion. Some of this pent up frustration can come out. So it's just something to be mindful of.
So what happens then if you're not there, right? What happens if you're not there? This is the Black females that graduated in the class of 2019. So we grew from the 4 in 1992 to this many, and I forget what the number is off the top of my head in 2019. But the young ladies that I
counted, I think it was 20.
Okay. The young ladies that I told you about at the beginning when they said that they don't have a voice, in their summer training, they wanted somebody to talk, and they only wanted people who looked like them. Well, if you carry small numbers, that person can't be everywhere.
Yeah.
Right?
It becomes a bit of a burden, right? That minority gets tapped over and over and over again.
Right. That person has to do training. So there was another female who came to me, and she couldn't go to her aviation training like she wanted to because she was the only Black that was suitable to be at this group at that time. That could be a career killer too. So it is a leadership issue to say that if I am putting you in that spot to mentor, to attract, and to do things, you need to put it in my job description that I'm doing the margin work, the outside margin work to support the organization's mission. Because oftentimes that extra time that you have to spend mentoring and talking and influencing and recruiting other people is not in your job requirements. Other people get to go home and have dinner and have those talks. Some of us have to have that conversation later on.
This is pretty common in the space of DEI work in organizations, because many organizations, and we're starting to see a decline in this, many organizations don't have a paid role, or that role, it's going to vary on type of role and level of role. So some might be purely administrative. They schedule the business resource group meetings. They are the ones that just do all the administrative pieces behind the scenes to support their efforts, whatever those efforts may be.
Right.
Others have a leadership role where they are responsible for designing the strategy, implementing the strategy, and producing reports, both internal and external, and everything in between. So the concern then is, if we're talking about it in particularly with veterans, if I have hired a veteran and I want to give them that time to transition in, but I also want to learn how to support them, I shouldn't be going to them overnight. Okay, but tell me about this. Well, how can I do that? They're an only voice. They can only share their experiences. They can't speak for the group.
Right. They're
and
not
is
a
that
monolith.
over reliance then on that insight?
Right. Yes. So in addition to that, having someone, standing up groups are good. Having a trained stand-up program would be better. Having a trained stand-up program with an executive sponsor is optimal. Right? Because that leader is expected to be able to see those things. That facilitator who actually trains the presidents or the staff of the ERGs can kind of tell you, this is, what are the pros and cons of starting this group? What is your intention? Where do you plan to go? How can you leverage each other's skills so that it's not on one person's shoulder? And then at the same time, the things that are of a common concern within an organization that a certain ERG is feeling, that sponsor will be able to speak for them at higher levels.
Oh, that's always important. Well, so I want to flip over here. I'm looking at the time. I want to flip over here a little bit, because there was a question that came in. How will DEI help the nation, military, et cetera, prepare for the cultural conflict that we're going to start to see potentially globally? And I think they're talking about just, maybe it's from a military perspective, this question, but it's also navigating and working through and working with other countries. So is there some DEI work that's happening in the military that can help us with that? And I put this slide up because when you were doing this work in the military, these were some of the things that came to mind, when you and I were talking. And I'm looking at that list, and it's very similar to mine, with the exception of the first item.
Right. So we as military people, we are very, very good in going into other countries and helping them with civil engagement and reconstruction and diplomacy. We are excellent at it. We're trained for it, we have the DIME MP, diplomacy, economic, military, I forget what the I stands for. But we actually train towards those areas. We want to make sure that we help struggling countries, countries whose sovereign rights are impinged upon. We have our partners and our allies throughout the world. So we know how to do that. And the funny thing is, you sometimes ask yourself sarcastically, well, if we know how to do that for others, how can we bring that into the United States with what we do?
Well, but the shoemaker has no shoes phenomenon is a very real thing. We do wonderful work over there, but maybe we don't bring those same things into our homes. So that's nothing
like
new.
how do you clean others' house but you can't clean your own? Or the hairdresser, doing other people's hair but can't do your own. Well, let me go there. I'm sorry. But there is some hypocrisy when you look at it in that way. I think that across the world, first of all, everyone across the world is looking at what we do. Okay, so in history, the Nuremberg laws were created off of our Jim Crow and slavery laws. Period.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's what Nazi Germany did. You go across the seas now. I go visit Sri Lanka, and you see them fostering women in their military, right? Wearing our uniforms. They actually bought their uniforms to look the same as ours. And they want to know everything that we do, and how do they get better, and how do they move women up the chain. Even in Japan now, they have female commanding officers. So they're evolving from their own cultural beliefs, and understanding having a more diverse workforce from their countries are helpful, more gender involvement. Regarding culture, we are becoming even more of a multicultural, multi-dimensional culture. I don't know how you say that, because it doesn't have to be just two cultures. It could be three or four.
More
or more.
intersectional culture.
Intersectional cultures, right? So,
I'm going to actually launch a polling question, but you can keep sharing it. But I know we've got it. I want to make sure.
So when you have that, and you have that identification that you want to, be part of, how do you hit that person and understand what's important to them? Again, it's a leadership issue. The leaders have to know how to reach out and create an environment where somebody says, yes, I can contribute to that. I feel open to contribute, and I feel a sense of belonging within that organization, where my thoughts will not be reprimanded or joked upon or anything, but will actually be taken seriously and can be implemented. Doesn't matter who comes to the table with that idea. It doesn't matter that that person has a three-piece suit on, or whatever, or that doesn't matter if a person is 6 feet tall and has a bass voice, which is what most CEOs are. It's for everybody else who has an idea and knows how to make things happen.
So I can see the poll's almost about to close.
Okay.
If you want to push the results and share them briefly, publish them. We had a question about the last poll that we didn't share the results. But the last poll, I think it was 79% of people said that they did not belong to any military related affinity or resource groups. And so here we can see that, I switched it on my screen. 31% said they do have a program. 40% said they weren't sure. And then 14% said no. So for the not sures and the no's, I think there's an opportunity to ask, because it could be some of the no's that should be a yes. And then the not sures, they can find out more. And even we talked about earlier, even if it's a no, maybe there's some opportunities to get in there and to help.
Right.
So we have about 10 minutes left. I'm going to formally bring us to Q&A. But before I do that, maybe in a minute or so, this is a really wonderful slide. You talked a little bit about allyship. I know you wanted to share this.
Well, these are my roommates. So I told you about my sisterhood, but these are my roommates. So they went through the 4 years at the Naval Academy with me. And here's one thing that I will say on me being the only Black woman in this. The woman on your left, the left of the picture, her name is Holly. When George Floyd happened, she openly shared, she started doing a lot of introspection, and she came to me and she goes, I never really had a Black friend like you. And that maybe there were things that I didn't see, or didn't see what was going on. And I shared with them. They didn't know that there were things that were going on with me. Me being pulled aside, or watching the performance ranking system and all the Blacks in the company being ranked at the bottom. They didn't see the little hidden things that were going around, nor did I share. The adult Timi, going back to the young Timi, would have sat with my roommates and said, do you know what they just did to me? Because they could have been a greater ally so much earlier in the process. But we are besties. I've been in each of their weddings. Great kids, diverse backgrounds all over the United States. And I'm just so proud to call them my sisters too. The young lady on the right, her name is Abigail. She's from New Orleans, Louisiana. So when George Floyd was murdered, she came to me. Now she's a freshman. A freshman at a service academy, at a military service academy, has no time to think, okay? They're just told to march in one direction and do what they're told to do. But she came and she said, I want to help. And she said, I went through a program in the New Orleans public schools offered by the, it just escaped me, but it was an organization. She saw her friends who were not looking, who were Black, minority,
Right.
and she saw what was happening to them. And she said, that's not fair. Why are they being treated worse than I am? And so they actually had their school, their leadership caught on to that early and had some intervention, some trainings happening in their high school. So when she came to the academy and the George Floyd incident breakout, and she had seen things happening at the academy, she says, I want to help. And so she helped me create what's called a diversity peer educator program.
Oh, nice.
Right. So we created actually a training and certification for at least one individual in every company. We have 30 companies at the Naval Academy, and one individual among the 33 NCAA Division I teams that we have, to create a safe space for midshipmen to go to and say, I'm okay, but I'm not really okay. This was said to me and I don't know how to take it. Or an upper class could come to them and say, hey, I'm thinking about this. Am I coming across the wrong way? So she helped me do that vector check. And today she holds the title of 3 stripes, at the academy. And that was me buying her badges to wear on her uniform in a uniform shop. And I'm so proud of her because she has service selected submarines. Don't know where she's going, but she's like a daughter to
Only
me.
moving up, right?
Allyship at its best.
Yeah, yeah. All right, so I've got so there have been a lot of thank yous, by the way, in the Q&A, and so many people are just excited to hear you speak, are grateful for your service, and also can really relate to some of the experiences you shared. So I don't know if you've been keeping an eye on the Q&A, but there's been quite a bit that have come in.
Oh, good. I'm good. No, I haven't been able to see them, but I'm really happy. And can I talk a little bit about my job and connection now?
You can, hold on, I want to show them. So I'm gonna give you the last minute. So I just
want
to
okay, the most important picture that I share with you.
Oh yeah, well, I'm gonna put this up. So this beautiful picture is that this is your family, right? That's your daughter and your son. She's just bragging as a mom now.
Yes,
but,
I am.
and you're all serve in the military together.
That's correct. That's correct.
I actually wanted to come to this slide, but we didn't have enough time, and we maybe need to just talk some more and have another session, because one of the things that organizations are starting to understand is caregiver status, and that maybe they need to be thinking about how they can support their current employees. They might not be the one with ... but they live with or supporting or caring for somebody who is. So for example, I could be caring for somebody in my family who is a veteran who is struggling, and there might be a burden on me, and I might be bringing that into the workplace. And right. So, but that's not the case here. You're smiling. I want everybody to know this is the picture of her family.
Yeah. So
I'm gonna give you 60 seconds because then we're gonna have to wrap up.
We've definitely transitioned from we didn't issue your family in a sea bag, so don't bring them with your problems, here. We are a family. We understand the environments. April is month of the military child, and I couldn't be more proud of my children. Maybe they didn't understand what I was going through at that time, but I had no idea that I was creating such a positive influence for them to follow my steps at the Naval Academy. Naval Academy is an individual decision. You can't influence somebody to go there, or push somebody to go there, I should say. So my son and daughter, Elise, she graduates in 48 days. I'm so excited.
Who's counting?
Who's counting, right? And then my son, Eric, is a sophomore. I became a single mom in my journey. And then while my husband and I were good co-parents, he died. So the idea of single mom was just new. So how do I be that figure and still be able to manage my career through all this? It was hard. But I'm proud to say that in 48 days, my daughter and I will become the first Black mother-daughter in Naval Academy history to graduate.
Congratulations.
So proud.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Well, I am going, we're at the end.
And that's our ranks right there, by the way.
That's one of the questions What was that? I'm sorry.
That was our class rings in the middle picture. I'm sorry, I
Oh,
didn't explain it.
no,
Yeah.
it's beautiful. Those are beautiful pictures. Thank you for sharing all those pictures with us. This is a series. It's every other Friday. So 2 weeks from now, Dr. Carlotta Roman is going to be joining me. We're going to be talking about some organizational psychology, change management, and why understanding that is important when implementing DEI culture. If you want to reach out to Timi at the very beginning of the slide deck, you have her information. It's right here on this slide. Her contact information is there. You can visit her website and reach out to her, as well as me. You're welcome to reach out to me anytime if you have any questions. Let's go ahead and launch that fourth polling question while we're just wrapping it up. I hope everyone has learned something today and that this has been helpful. Timi, thank you so much for joining me. Your experiences are priceless, and I
Thank you
really
so much
enjoyed
for
listening to them.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Congratulations on your many accomplishments from one mother-daughter duo to the next. Stay blessed. Someone
Thank you.
says, there was a saying that if we wanted you to have a family, we would have issued you one. I'm not sure where that one came from, but I thought it was
No,
funny.
yeah, they said issued in your sea bag. Exactly. There was one. That's true.
Listening to the captain makes me miss the relationship I had with my fellow sailors. For 1 hour today, I felt like I was back on active duty. Thank you. Just wonderful.
I
This
hope
session
that's
was
a good
excellent.
feeling.
You were excellent. Somebody said thank you for your service, for your contributions to the world.
Thank you.
A lot of those. So I just wanted you to know that there has been quite a bit of thank yous for your service that's come through today.
Thank you.
So,
Thank
yeah, no, it's been wonderful. I'm looking forward. We're going to continue working together, folks. Thank you all for joining us today. I will hand it back over to Autumn to close us out.